Hi, I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in the stream. Today, African states are often portrayed as lacking good leaders. Are they being unfairly singled out? We examine why in 6 years, only 3 former heads of states met the criteria for the biggest cash prize, recognizing achievements in African leadership. Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, is managing all your questions and comments coming to us via Twitter, Facebook, and our website. Malika, encouraging responsible leadership is a challenging task, not just in Africa, but in other continents as well. A lot of debate among our community as to whether a large cash prize is the right incentive for good leadership.
You're right. We got a lot of tweets on that, and there's one that's indicative of what most of them are saying from Milana. She says, I'd be interested to see if leaders are vying for the prize, if it's on their radar, and if it's of value to them, since corruption money is often greater than $5 million. So for those of you at home, we want to know what you think. Join us. Tweet us with the hashtag AJStream.
To Malika's right is Callisto Madavo. He is a visiting professor to the African Studies program at Georgetown University. He was in charge of many World Bank-supported activities in 47 sub-Saharan African countries, focusing on economic growth and poverty reduction and promotion of good governance. Callisto, welcome to the stream.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad to have you. Today, we're also joined by members of our community, just like you. They're coming to us via the Google Plus Hangout. Hey guys, thanks for being here. We're going to get to all your comments and questions shortly. Now, for those of you who would like to be in future Hangouts, just add us to your circles. Go to the link that you see at the bottom of the screen.
Hi, I'm Annie Leonard with the Story of Stuff Project, and I'm in the stream.
Politicians do things for their own benefits, but for a leader is somebody who minds other people.
Politician just now seems to be somebody who's full of rhetoric and a need for a higher salary.
If someone puts the interests of the people he's leading at heart, then he's definitely going to make a good leader.
The key difference is politicians create followers, leaders create leaders.
Politician is also a leader because anasimamia constituency wase wamchoose. Lakini politicians wetu hapa say we can't call them leaders, ni makona artists.
What is leadership? Uongozi, a reality TV show coming soon to NTV, is looking for brave new leaders like you.
That Kenyan reality TV show is not the only initiative looking to define good leadership. Sudanese-born entrepreneur and billionaire Mo Ibrahim created and financed a foundation in his name to improve governance in the African continent. Ibrahim explains in this clip from the Gates Notes.
We are really focusing on the issue of governance. For that purpose, we produce the index, which is a record, a scorecard for every single African countries. We measure 88 parameters: sustainable economic development, to human development, education, health, human rights, rule of law, etc. That really is a scorecard important for accountability.
And to stress accountability, the foundation established the Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership. At $5 million, it is the most valuable prize in the world. It's given to former African heads of state who deliver substantial improvements to their countries and who democratically transfer power to their successor. Since its establishment 6 years ago, only 3 nominees received the award. The last of the winners is former president of Cape Verde, Pedro Rodrigues Pires. He was recognized in 2011 for his work in transforming Cape Verde into an African success story. But 2012 failed to produce a winner. Now, for Ibrahim, 3 winners in 6 years is a great achievement. But for some critics, rewarding politicians for simply doing their job is no incentive. And for skeptics, $5 million just isn't enough to turn leaders away from corruption. So, is the Ibrahim Prize the right incentive for responsible leadership? To help us answer some of these questions, we're joined via Skype from Nairobi by John Gitango. He is the CEO of Inuka Kenya Trust. Inuka in Swahili means get up. And the Trust is a nonprofit organization with a mission to empower Kenyans to use information, express their views, and hold their governments accountable. John, welcome to the stream.
Thank you very much.
So, John, you're the former advisor to the Kenyan president on ethics and governance, but you resigned and then you exposed hundreds of millions of dollars in government corruption. Were your frustrations with what was going on in Kenya emblematic of what you see happening in other countries across Africa?
I think corruption, there's a Ghanaian saying that says that a fish rots from the head, and therefore when you have systemic corruption in a society, it is often the case that that corruption starts with the presidency, with the at the top of the government, and I think that may in part explain why Mr. Mo Ibrahim introduced a prize for African leaders who retire without having looted their economies and generally govern their nations in a manner that is inimical to development generally.
Callisto, John mentioned systemic corruption, and it's something that we've seen a lot from our community today via tweets, that this is happening in many countries across Africa. Is this something that's really entrenched? I know you're great at giving historical perspectives on what's happening in Africa. Is this something that we can sort of trace back?
Corruption, it is indeed a fundamental issue and a fundamental problem in Africa. And, you know, while to a certain extent there are headlines about that, we also need to remind ourselves that other continents, other regions of the world, corruption is also an issue there. But it is particularly important that Africa addresses this issue systematically, because we can't afford to have some of these resources ending up in banks in Switzerland or in London or in New York when there are so huge needs in education, in infrastructure, and so on. So to the extent that we could have these resources going into development programs that help ordinary people improve the quality of life, that I think would be the way to go. So Africa does need to address this issue because it is an important and fundamental issue.
And just to frame this up for everybody, the amount of resource that you're talking about is $143 billion a year, which is a quarter of the continent's GDP that's getting sucked out in corruption.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of thoughts on the prize itself from our community members. Mohammed says, good governance in Africa depends on a collective paradigm shift of its people. A prize of hundreds of millions of dollars won't help. But there's another from I Am Jamal, and he says, the problem is that voters vote in tribal manners, hence the problem emanates from us. But I'd like to go now to a video comment left by a member of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Have a listen.
Let me say this. First of all, it's a prize for excellence. And when you give a prize for excellence, obviously, you should naturally expect not to have everybody winning it. The fact that Africa has had 3 excellent leaders over the last 6 years should be a good thing for the continent, and we should be proud to hold up these 3 gentlemen, they all happen to be men, to hold them up to the world and say, these have come out of Africa. If the prize can spark a healthy and an informed debate about the quality of governance and leadership on the continent, I think it would be a great contribution to events and to political movement in Africa. My question is, will any African out there want us to water down the criteria for this award just so we have a winner every year?
John, I want to pose that question to you. He goes on to say he doesn't think so, but do you think that the criteria are too tough?
No, I don't think the criteria are too tough. I think that I don't think we should focus very much on the millions of dollars that will be won by African leaders when they win the Mo Ibrahim Prize. I think the key thing is that over time this prize gaining prestige is creating the kind of debate that we are having now about leadership in Africa and about the importance of good leadership, good governance in leadership in Africa. And I think that in itself is important. And there's a whole generation of young Africans for whom this is extremely important to them. The $5 million is neither here nor there. I don't think Mr. Mo Ibrahim is going to be spending very much of his money in the next generation, but I think that this prize can become an icon that can help focus attention on an issue that is critical if Africa is going to be able to take advantage of its very unique opportunities that exist now. As Mr. Madabo was saying, we've had consistent growth over the past 15, 20 years, and we're at the point of takeoff, and we're held back by issues of governance, bad leadership, corruption, tribalism, and all of them combined can lead to a false dawn.
Callisto, John says the $5 million shouldn't matter either way, but we're talking about a guy, Mo Ibrahim, who prides himself on having never offered a bribe. And many of his critics are saying essentially what he's doing is just bribing people who should be doing their job to act in a moral and ethical way.
No, I think I very much agree with John. This prize is a recognition of, excellence and performance. And I think it should be continued, and I wouldn't, by the way, water down the criteria. I think one should stick to this criteria. There will be few people who win it. It's selective in that sense, but that's okay with me. I think the real issue is, what else besides the Mo Ibrahim Prize do we need to do in Africa to develop the kind of leadership that is going to lift the continent?
Well, how do you develop exceptional leadership without a financial incentive?
Well, giving a recognition and giving a prize is one way of doing it, and I say it should continue. But I think there is issue of supporting leadership institutes, training young people, looking at the next generation of who is coming up. Now, these are people that we cannot yet give prizes to, but certainly we can spend resources developing their talents, giving them the confidence to lead in the next generation.
I'd like to go now to our Google Plus Hangout, where Edwina is speaking to us from Ohio and originally hails from Sierra Leone. Go ahead, Edwina.
Hey, hello, Professor Modavo. Now, my question is, the Mo Ibrahim Prize is the largest prize in the world, and because of that, it does have very strict requirements. However, if we as an African continent choose to adopt the model of Western democracies, we find that the requirements are actually what we're supposed to be doing anyway, if you are a leader. Now, if you happen to be a despotic leader and you have the opportunity to use the state's treasury as your personal bank account, does the prize serve as a strong enough incentive to encourage competition for good governance and good leadership examples?
Great question.
I don't think, in fact, that this prize, as I said, in itself, is going to, grow the leadership. It's a recognition. It's going to be selective. There are going to be few people who are going to be recognized. The issue that leaders that we have are not doing what they're supposed to be doing is a fundamental problem. And we need to find other ways of addressing how we broaden the leadership, how we grow a critical mass of people and leaders who are in fact serving their people, behaving democratically, and willing to leave the stage when the time comes. And I think Mo Ibrahim Prize is reinforcing this, and I think this is important for the future.
John, talk a little bit about the population problem. Callisto is talking about raising up this younger generation. Half of the population of 1 billion people is under 20 right now, and by 2050 that's supposed to be 3/4 of the population. How does that play into this discussion that we're having?
I think it's at the same time a tremendous opportunity for Africa. It is also a big risk if it is not the most important resource that Africa has at hand are Africans themselves. And we've seen from all other regions of the world that if you're going to take off, you need a young, industrious, healthy population to be able to drive development. That population needs to be healthy, to live in a secure environment, and therefore the need for good governance and for that governance should be led by leaders who are able to lead by example. And I think that's a key behind this the Mo Ibrahim Prize, and why not so many leaders are going to get it right now. That if you look around the African continent and the few leaders who even young Africans admire, whether they're historical leaders, it's often leaders who died poor or who didn't die millionaires. And this huge bulk of our population in Kenya, we have about over 70% of our population below the age of 34. This youth bulge across the continent is gonna drive development across the continent. If we mishandle it, then it'll lead to polarization, the increase in identity politics, inequality, and instability. So we're at a very critical juncture, and I think this young generation who are all interconnected and wired and are full of very, very powerful aspirations which they share with their colleagues in other parts of the world, are in a very unique position to imagine for themselves and to think of a future that we couldn't even have fathomed. But in 3-4 years' time, for example, the idea that an African American could have become president of the U.S. for this generation means nothing. For some of us, 10 years ago, that was completely unthinkable. So we have a brave new young generation.
Well, speaking of a brave new young generation, I want to get to one of those members. This is Nina, who's speaking to us from DC and originally hails from Ghana. She's in our Google Plus Hangout. Nina, go ahead.
Hi, I had a question. I think the Mo Ibrahim Prize is a top-down method to promoting good governance. But good governance requires all parts of society to recognize and act against corruption. So how can the message of the prize also recognize and congratulate those at the bottom, such as civil society groups, not just the one person at the top?
Professor, do you want to address that one?
I think this is a very, very important point you are making. When we're talking about leadership in Africa, we're not just talking about heads of state. Although they play an important role, we're talking about leaders in civil society, we're talking about leaders in youth groups, we're talking about leaders in women's groups, we're talking about leaders in the private sector, for example. So while we welcome the Ibrahim Prize, I think we need to find other ways in which we can recognize the leadership in these other areas that I just articulated. Recognize them, reward them, develop them, and encourage them to play the kind of role that we want our leaders to play. So I agree with you. The bottom is very, very important, and leadership is not just an issue of the heads of state or heads of government in Africa.
Great point. I'm just tweeting that out right now. In fact, that's an essential thing to remember. John, when we're talking about leading by example, I want to get to these 3 winners of the Ibrahim Prize. And those 3 countries, if we look at them now that these leaders have left, what's the legacy that they've left behind? And I'm curious because I'm wondering if there's anything lasting after these people receive the prize for the good work they've done and then they leave office. Does it just revert back to what it was?
I don't think so. I think that there is a sense of civic pride in these countries that their leaders have been recognized in this way, and I don't think that can be taken away from them. And I think that is at the heart of what this kind of prize seeks to promote, is a sense of pride that we have a leader who is found to be worthy of winning it. It will take time. As I said, I don't think that Mr. Ibrahim is going to be spending too much of his money on this prize in the next generation, but it takes sometimes a full generation before some of these kind of iconic instruments are properly consolidated.
Yeah. Could I just add a point on this? If you look, for example, at President Moai of Botswana, who was one of the winners, he set a real example on how a country could tackle an issue like HIV/AIDS. And after he has left office, he continues to play a very important role in Southern Africa in leading on HIV/AIDS. If you look at President Chisano of Mozambique, the other winner, he has a foundation now. He is playing a very important role in reconciliation efforts in areas of conflict, and he continues to play a role, for example, by leading things like a study that was done for the African Development Bank about how the African Development Bank can better help Africa's development. I happen to work under him on that effort. So, these leaders have not only done something in the past, but they are, in fact, continuing to make a contribution. And I think to the extent that the Mo Ibrahim Prize, in addition to the 5 million, gives people the ability and the means to continue to contribute, I think this is a very, very good thing, because then we are taking advantage of the capacity that was developed by these people when they were governing.
And I think when you're talking about continuing, it's $200,000 a year for 10 years after they leave office to do good projects and do good things, right?
That's correct.
Well, picking up on this theme of doing good things, we've got a lot of tweets from people who say that their countries are doing it right. Great Waterhouse says, Botswana got independent in 30th September 1966. It's held free and fair democratic elections since independence. Another from Milena who says Malawi, Somalia, Senegal, for example, had peaceful transitions after their leader's death in elections. And one more from Dowdeen who says the only place of change and good governance in sub-Saharan Africa is Ghana. The rest are just power-hungry village elders. I'm sure some of our community members will disagree with that. But I'd like to go now to Google Plus and hear from a Tanzanian, Ahmed Salim. Go ahead.
Greetings from Dar es Salaam. What was interesting here in Tanzania is how the prize was received. Tanzania, for the first time, cracked the top 10. But in our discussions over the past week with young individuals and young professionals, they've been quite cynical and negative. They were actually questioning how is it possible that our country has made it to the top 10. So I think the question is, or rather my concern is, how do you harmonize policymakers, and how do you figure out things on the ground? How do you measure progress on the ground when things at the bottom to the top are even better, even though we're actually being perceived to be doing quite well?
Lister, do you want to address that one?
I think it is very interesting to me that young people in Tanzania are saying, how is it that Tanzania is now 10th in the league, while we don't really see the difference? The very fact that a dialogue of that nature is beginning in Tanzania, where young people are beginning to ask, what is it that is happening in the country that other people see that we don't? Is the kind of conversation that is going to foment further change. In other words, the people who are rating Tanzania number 10, hopefully will take opportunities to dialogue with the Tanzanians, particularly the youth, to tell them why it is that they're ranking them so high. But also to encourage them that, just because they're number 10, that is not enough. They should aspire to be number 1. And what is it going to take for Tanzania to move from 10 to 1?
Good question.
John, at the beginning of the show, we played a clip from essentially a reality TV show that you're involved that is seeking out the next best leaders for Africa. But really what it's doing, I think, is what Callisto's talking about, which is getting it in the minds of young people that they can do better. They can see a bigger and better vision for their country. I want you to give us a brief little bit about the TV show, and then we're going to pick that up in the post show because we're coming to the end of this program. But tell us a little bit about it.
I think the Uongozi reality TV show basically encourages young Kenyans, or all Kenyans, to apply to become leaders. And as you know, we've just had a new constitution promulgated in 2010 in Kenya after violence in 2008 that almost led to a civil war. So Kenya's at the brink of great possibilities or great problems. And so we decided to create a reality TV show that people can participate in and get people used to the idea of participating in elective processes, to winning and losing.
John, I'm going to have to stop you right there, but we're going to pick this up in our online post show. So hold that thought and join us at stream.aljazeera.com to continue the conversation. Welcome to the Streams Online Post Show. We're going to pick up right where we left off. We're talking about creating more good governance in Africa and really developing leaders, that young generation that's coming up. And we were just talking with John Gatongo, who is a good governance advocate. And John, you were telling us about a reality TV program that's quite innovative that you're involved in Africa.
Yes, I mean, the idea behind the show was inspired by Lead India, which was a project that was done by the Times of India, which is the world's largest English language newspaper. And in Kenya here, our own little organization, Inuka, has partnered with the largest media group in the region to encourage Kenyans to step up, to be leaders, to contest leadership, even if it's only in this the context of a reality TV show, where they're questioned both by ordinary citizens and by judges, and there'll be winners at the end with a prize, and just to get people used to the idea that leadership is not the preserve of men, is not the preserve of a few men who have in some of our countries been in charge for over a generation, just to get people used to the idea that young people can also vie for elective office, and to break the mold a little bit. And the show is on multiple platforms. There's 41 radio stations at the same time. It's on television, billboards, road shows, posters, newsprint articles, essays. So we have about 7 different platforms on which the Wongozi show is being rolled out at the same time.
So you're really, using the media to make it common practice for people to exercise their civil voice, right? And that's what
exactly.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're going to let Callisto pick up on this. Just a second, John. Go ahead.
Exactly. They are in fact using these means to mobilize, to create networks, to give young people the confidence.
Yes.
That they are not just one or two, that there's a critical mass of them that are beginning to think differently and to look at the possibilities in the future, of the opportunities and the challenges. And I think this is exactly the sort of thing that we should applaud and encourage.
Our community agrees with that also. We just got a tweet in about 2 minutes ago, John, saying the project that you're working on is what we need in Africa, not the Mo Ibrahim Prize. Now, of course, that's debatable, but I want to go now to one of the young people that you were mentioning who's in our hangout. Nina has a follow-up question. Nina, go ahead. Nina, you might need to unmute your microphone.
I think it's Edwina.
Go ahead.
I believe Edwina has the question.
Edwina, do you have a question for John?
Yes.
Go ahead.
My question had to deal with the generational gap between our African leaders and our youth, our population. How do we breach that gap, connect, and actually continue to value, respect, and honor the contributions that our youth are making and the ideas that young individuals such as ourselves have in terms of how our countries are run?
Well, in the initiative that we have launched, Wongozi, which is Swahili for leadership, it embraces the core values of our organization, which include diversity. So we're reaching out especially to young people, especially to women, the disabled, and members from traditionally marginalized groups in Kenya. So we've made every effort to find radio stations in the most remote parts of the country and get the program out there, get people there applying, especially young people, saying you can do it. And we have the slogan of our organization is Nisisi, which means it is us. And the question that the program asks is Ninani, which in Swahili asks, who is it? And the answer is it is us. We own the problems, we own the solutions, and it is young people who have to step up and take control of Africa's problems and come up with the solutions.
And make that change. Callisto, is a lack of
make that change happen.
Is a lack of African unity playing a role at all in this problem?
It is, in fact. I was going to add a footnote to John's point, which is he's developing a network, a movement within Kenya. I think what we then need to do is to see whether similar movements are being developed in other countries, and building some of these movements and bringing them together at the continental, sub-regional level, continental level, so that they reinforce each other and they become an irresistible force driving change. So I think the lack of unity, because there's been a lot of rhetoric in Africa about African unity, regional integration, and so on. But when you actually take away the rhetoric and look at the reality, the fact is we as Africans and African countries are not working very effectively together. So the lack of unity has been a negative. I think we need to do better.
Well, you spoke of driving change, and there's a few members of our community who want to take this back to the prize itself and other ways that change can be driven. There's a tweet here that says, I think the award should also recognize African journalists who work hard to expose African governments' corruptions. And there's also a video comment here. John, have a listen to this.
Hi, my name is Rona and I'm contributing from London. I think the Mo Ibrahim Prize is not really much of an incentive because at 5 million prize money in my country, Nigeria, between 4 billion to 8 billion leaves the state coffers in terms of corruption. So much more than that is looted in monetary terms. And even if the prize remains, I think it should move to whistleblowers and other things, not necessarily presidents.
So awarding whistleblowers, journalists, do you think that's the idea? John?
Well, I mean, I think we saw the other day that the Mo Ibrahim Foundation gave a prize to Bishop Desmond Tutu for his tremendous consistency in speaking truth to power. So yes, journalists, whistleblowers, and other Africans who step up to the plate in terms of improving governance can also be perhaps in the future considered for different prizes. The Mo Ibrahim Prize right now focuses very much on leadership, and one of the trends that one finds, and I've heard it in this conversation that we've been having, the younger the listener, and this is also true in Kenya, the greater the skepticism about awarding $5 million to an African leader, hoping that this will change behavior. But I think with time, the prize will become iconic, that nations will feel proud that their leader retires and wins this prize. And it's not about the money, it's about the prestige of being recognized as somebody who has served their nation and served truly, not just enriched themselves and divided their people.
Callisto,
can I add a footnote?
We've only got about a minute left, so
okay.
Sure, go ahead.
My footnote would be that I think the award of a special prize to Desmond Tutu is a pointer to the future. I hope that the Mo Ibrahim Foundation will, as they learn, right, enrich this prize by perhaps extending similar recognitions to other groups, which might include journalists or civil society leaders, as I said at an earlier point. Sorry for jumping
No, I
in.
think that's a great note to end it on. So our thanks to you, Callisto Madavo. John Gatongo, thank you for joining us, and of course everyone in our Google Plus Hangout, and to everyone in our community who sent us video comments and questions and tweeted us throughout the show. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow when we talk about the race for the White House and how it's narrowing, and ask the question if a third-party vote could decide the presidency. Until then, we'll see you online.